on? Welcome to the Doug Show. I'm Doug Cunnington, and today I'm trying to record outside. There's dogs barking, there's crickets making noise. The sun could give me a hard time. The audio might not even be recording, but we're gonna do our best. I was about to make notes, and then I thought, fuck it, we'll just go for it, So we're gonna go for it today. The topic will be something that Lauren Hunter put a seed into my head. And we were talking a couple weeks ago about when to quit blogging or stop projects and that sort of thing, which is a hard thing to figure out. There's sunk costs. There's the fact that sometimes if you want to work on something, it takes a long time before you get traction. There's plenty of examples out there, but there's other times where maybe you should quit and you're actually wasting your time and you should move on to something else. Really hard to tell. It's extremely hard to tell. So one thing in the conversation, Lauren mentioned, actually, it was before we started recording, and she maybe was like, how much time do you spend working? And like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm in a really weird spot. I don't work that much right now. And the thing is, with the Doug.Show and the niche site project and all that kind of sort of content, we were talking about side hustles. We were talking about like how to earn money online and that sort of thing. And I'm not really testing that stuff out anymore. There's some dog around here that the people must have locked the dog outside and it just wants to be with its family or something like that. So I apologize for that. Georgie's hanging out right behind me. She's just chilling. She may come up closer in a few minutes. People that are just listening, you won't obviously see this, but Georgie's in the frame here, and she likes to play, but she's taking a little rest right now. She's like laying down, but she has a frisbee like laying across her arms or legs. I guess they're legs, but it's her front legs, so I consider them arms. All right, so Lauren was like, hey, how much time do you spend working? And I was like, I don't spend that much time working. I've whittled things down, and my other podcast is MileHighFi, and it's about early retirement. My wife retired about 18 months ago, and I have been working for myself for about a decade. I didn't even celebrate my layoff day. I kind of forgot about it. It's removed from my daily thinking. I don't even think about the corporate job anymore. I don't do that much work, and it's really refined down to the work that I want to do most of the time. Now, you can't get away from admin all the time, but I have stopped replying to so many emails. If I don't want to write an email newsletter that week, I don't do it. If I want to, then I'll go for it. I'll write a few that week. So I'll describe kind of what I'm working on, kind of how a week looks for me. And I'll also talk about the fact that some people were probably nervous, well, if I wasn't working on something, then what do I do with my time? And I've chatted with at least dozens of retired people that are young, say in their 30s or 40s or early 50s. Very few people are bored. So I'll give you a little info on that. But more importantly, a lot of people want to get to a spot where work is optional, and that is where I have arrived. So the work that I'm doing is optional. I don't have to do it. And it's good to work on things and to be productive and creative, and I get that part of it, but it's far less than whatever I expected. And again, I've talked to people and I'm like, yeah, my wife retired, and they're like, I just don't know what, that's crazy. I would be so bored. I like to be productive. And I think I would have thought that back in the day, but I don't think it anymore. And I don't do that much work. And I can tell you it's fucking awesome. I love it. It's not for everybody, but it works for me. So the bigger piece that I'll cover today is just what I did while I was working on my side hustles, when I had a full-time gig, and it enabled us to have a work optional lifestyle. Some people would want to travel, some people want to work on their pet projects, and maybe like start the business that they actually want to work on that doesn't have to earn as much money. That said, I'm just going to tell you stories. This is not financial or legal advice in any capacity. I'm just going to tell you what I did, and I'm not prescribing this to anyone, and it's not financial advice, to be explicit. It's not financial advice in any way. And a lot of it's simple. I'm not going to even mention anything super specific. But anyway, typical week, I'm probably working, 3 or 4 days. And on those days, I'm probably working 45 minutes to, say, 4 hours or so. And the biggest chunks are when I'm actually like doing an interview. And I'll pause here because there's a plane flying overhead. It's often nice outside, but if it's not windy, there's like other noise. But it's peaceful out here, at least with the headphones on, and I can't hear the dog yipping back there. The days where I work longer, it's usually like an hour or an hour and a half of like an interview. So that's like the biggest chunk, and that actually goes by very quickly because it's fun. And that's the thing, I enjoy doing the interviews. It's a conversation, I get to learn about someone. Half the time I'm talking to a friend of mine and we're able to go into like a deeper conversation that you wouldn't normally have. Let's say I'm hiking with a group of people, or it's at a happy hour and there's a lot of people around. Maybe I don't ask as many questions and we don't have the same kind of conversation. It's different, of course, when it's for a podcast. But essentially, I'm chatting with people that I want to chat with. And there was a time, and I've complained about this in the past, where I would actually like interview people that had books coming out, or I was interviewing people where it looked like it could be an interesting opportunity for me to make the connection. I've since learned that I don't enjoy that, and it's not good for me to make the connection, and it's better for me to not do those interviews. And a lot of times these will come in, and it doesn't have to be someone promoting a book. They could be just trying to get out there on podcast. So they have a promotion company working for them, and they send an email and they're like, Joe Blow is a CEO. He pulled himself up by bootstraps and he's been able to become a multimillionaire, and he's a CEO, and it would be great for your audience to chat with him because he has all these great fucking stories, and he has a big email newsletter and social following and all this stuff, and he's going to promote it to his audience of 193,000 people. And I did a few of those and then realized, oh, these motherfuckers don't bring any of their audience. They just want to get either links or in front of my audience, and I don't care about their story, and they're a dime a fucking dozen. I don't give a shit. I don't want to talk to them. I now mark those as spam, and I probably have a bunch of domains and emails where I just don't get emails from them anymore because they kept sending me all this shit. I'm like, remove me from your list. And if it's someone really good, they're probably going to come in through like a channel that I'll accept, which is typically like a warm introduction, or if I meet someone in person. So I recently did an interview for my other podcast, but I met him at a live event. I talked to him, hung out with him for a couple hours or whatever, and they were passing through town, and I was like, great, come to the studio, we'll do an interview. You guys have a cool story, so we'll talk about it. And that worked out great. But typically, if I get an email, a cold email, I'm not even replying back these days. I used to say, it's not a good fit, whatever. But now I just mark it as spam and move on with my life. I do interviews. There's a little overhead. And if you've been following this podcast for a while, you know that I have somewhat struggled with what I was going to cover in the last, say, 6 months or so, because I'm not trying to start new side hustles. I'm not doing the stuff that people might be interested in the same way. I'm still interviewing some people here and there, but I'm just talking about stuff, right? Turns out people want to hear about that. It sounds like it's more interesting because number one, I'm not trying to sell anything. So that's different, because before I was at least trying to place everything in like the context of building websites and stuff like that, but I'm not selling anything now. So it pretty much frees me from anything. And again, I don't have to talk to anyone I don't want to or have content that's different than exactly what I want to create. So you hear the crickets here, you hear the plane and the dog barking in the background here. And it's a little bit more interesting. It took more work, but I think once I get a couple of these under my belt, it won't be too bad. All right, so skipping forward, it's just a few hours. The rest of my day, like today, it's it doesn't even matter what day, but today is happens to be a Saturday. I did normal like house cleaning stuff. So I like cleaned the bathrooms up a little bit, did a quick sweep, and a lot of times we still do this on the weekends. We don't have as many plans, maybe on weekends, but our days run together. So we don't even pay attention to weekends, other than we don't want to go to a place that's crowded because it is a weekend. So we may hike more during the week because there's less people out there hiking. So that's one thing where, I go to the grocery store early in the morning, Monday through Wednesday typically, because if you go to Costco or Sam's on the weekend, it's packed. That's when everybody else goes. So typically I'm trying to avoid crowds, but generally a day consists of, me walking Georgie for an hour to, about an hour, give or take. And then I'll do any sort of productive thing that I need to do in the morning. Usually before 2 p.m. is like my productive time of day. And occasionally I'll do an interview later if time zones don't allow for it. But again, because I've distilled down, I'm like, I don't want to wake up early to meet somebody's time zone, and I'm not going to work later than I want to. So I have a window, and I'm somewhat uncompromising for that unless there's some exceptional reason for me to do something outside of the window that I want to do things. I usually go to the gym, I would say 4 to 7 times a week, depending on what's going on. And I'll work out for 1 to 2.5 hours, depending on what's going on and what I want to do. And it just varies, and I kind of just figure out what I'm going to work on that day, the workout that day, depending on like what I did the previous days, how sore I am, how good my sleep was, a number of different factors. So I'm kind of like listening to my body and my mind on like how much stuff I want to do. I think now we have a baby crying out here, so it's sort of a cookie cutter suburban neighborhood. So while we have these privacy fences up, there's like 8 houses within earshot. So if you bring a crying baby out, it kind of carries. I don't know if you could hear it, but I can a little bit. It's like me trying to record at an airport or something like that. Okay, I don't work that much, and it turns out it's great because there's always stuff coming up. Or one thing you could kind of spend not an infinite amount of time on, but like fitness and health is something that you can spend a lot of time on. And occasionally here recently in the last, I would say 6 weeks, I would do 2 workouts a day, which is not typical because I really don't want to wear myself out. I don't want to injure myself, and that is a great way to overtrain. But I would go to the gym in the morning for only about half an hour. And the thing is, I could walk to the gym. So if I walk over there, I get a handful of steps. I could do a couple or say 2 to 5 sets of some exercise. Let's say I'm focusing on my shoulders or something. So I could work on that specific thing. And then I can come back to the gym later in the day, maybe when it's not as crowded, and I could do a little bit of a different kind of workout, maybe more cardio, or maybe I do more compound lifts or whatever. I'm just making up an example, but I've been working out a couple times a day, just a couple or a few times a week. And I'm not getting a huge number of steps, but like over the course of 6 weeks, it does make a difference if you look at like the total step count per day kind of thing, or like just how many workouts I'm getting, how many sets I'm getting on the shoulders or something like that. Again, just an example. No one look at my shoulders and judge if they're larger or smaller than they were the last time you saw me. Okay. The other part is I spent a huge amount of time cooking and on food. So yesterday was kind of an odd day, but I end up doing this maybe once every 2 weeks. I'll buy a huge amount of meat and then I'll grill most of it all in one day. I use a charcoal grill typically, which you might be able to see in the background of this video. It's just your standard like kettle. It's your standard Weber kettle. I think it's a 22-incher. And when you fire up the charcoal, it stays hot for a while. So I thought, if I have the grill hot already, I may as well go ahead and grill a bunch of other food. So I probably grilled, I don't know, 8 to 10 pounds of meat yesterday. I'll freeze a good portion of it. We label and date it, and we eat through it over the next week or so. And then we have frozen stuff that we can thaw whenever we're like, oh, you know what? I'll just thaw those chicken breasts out or whatever. They're already cooked. And, we have a vacuum sealer, so it's a great way to save the food there. All right. So I spend a ton of time on food. It's what I'm into. I like to shop for it. I like to cook it. I like to prepare it. Super fun. I probably spent 6 hours doing that yesterday. It's like a flow state. I didn't even realize, I'm like, oh shit, like the whole afternoon's gone. I've been cooking. This is awesome. The grill's going, pretty fun. I'll have a beer and it's great. I'll listen to a podcast or put some music on or whatever. Georgie hangs out. Elizabeth, my wife, will come out and play with Georgie and we'll just kind of be out here grilling. So that is fun. And I spend a lot of time on that. And then I put, food in with the health aspect because I'm not saying everybody needs to spend time on food. I spend an abnormal amount of time on food, but I enjoy it and it's a hobby and I've always cooked since I was a little kid, big in my family, and some families, they spend their time doing something else and that's totally fine. But for me, super fun, and cooking is it's a good way to spend my time, and it ends up being healthier than if we eat out typically. It's also cheaper too, even though I'm getting like premium meat and like great steaks and like prime fillets or whatever. It's much cheaper than eating out, which is surprising, but that's just the way it works out. And I have no issue spending money on food. The other thing that I have been spending more time on in the last couple of years is music and guitar, and I don't practice enough. Again, it's sort of like fitness and health. There's kind of an unlimited amount of time that you could put into like music and practicing, and if I put in 8 hours a day, assuming I didn't have like hand fatigue or anything like that, put in 8 hours a day, I would probably make a lot more progress, and it's super fun. I have been playing with a couple friends. I have a friend that lives sort of south of Denver, so he's about an hour away, but he plays drums, and we've been going to this spot where he could play drums really loud, and then I could bring my loud tube amp and turn it up all the way. And it's a lot of fun. Again, totally in a flow state, lose track of time. It's a blast. And we'll mostly just improvise and jam. We work together pretty well on that. Some people are a little more formalized and they want to learn songs and stuff. And we'll both say, yeah, you know what, we'll check out this song. And then even if it's a song that I propose and practice a little bit, I usually don't quite have it under my fingers. There's very few songs that I do. But anyway, he'll improvise, play some great drums, nice groove going on, and I'll try to jump in and we'll go back and forth and that sort of thing. It's really fun. I don't think we have any ambition to like start a band or perform in any way. However, strong chance like we will work on something to have like intro music for this show and for my other podcast as well. So that's how I spend my time, which was a bit rambly. So I appreciate you going along for the ride again. I did create notes today. The other thing I'm going to cover is something that I alluded to. If you're a longtime viewer and listener, number one, I appreciate that you do check out the content I'm putting out. However, the point here is you may have read in between the lines, or if you've met me in person and you've asked me a few questions, maybe at FinCon or other places like that, I probably told you, oh yeah, like I am not reinvesting everything back into my niche site. So rewind, say, to 2017 to 2020 or so, kind of the heyday of like niche sites and affiliate marketing in the way that we were building content websites in those days. And very effective. You could add a bunch of content. It was before AI writers and before ChatGPT. And if you were using an AI writer, you could tell the content was just pretty bad. And even a layperson could read the intro and think that this didn't quite sound right. But if you rewind, and you know what, I'll broaden it, say 2015 to 2020, because those years I think I worked pretty hard. I put a lot of hours trying to figure out how to work for myself. And basically, I was reinvesting some money back into the sites, sometimes a significant amount. So back in those days, I was probably only reinvesting 10 to 15% back into the sites. And some people probably would have said I was crazy. And I don't think I like publicized it widely. And again, I didn't keep track exactly, but if I look back, probably something like that, all right? And with the rest of the money, I, paid for some living expenses, but largely, like, we just saved that money. And this is the part that is not financial advice. This is just what I did. And I'm not advising anyone on anything. We basically invested in low-cost index funds, and Vanguard is the company that we primarily used. They are one of many that have these low-cost index funds, and we generally went for the total stock market index fund. So there's like S&P 500, there's the total stock market, and they're pretty darn close. The total stock market has 3,500 or 4,000 companies. S&P 500 has 500, of course, but they pretty much track pretty closely, and that is pretty much what we did. So we just invested that money. And I did, my wife did as well. And then there were good returns for several years. And at some point, compound interest kicks in and you are earning money via the interest. So you could look up the 4% rule, which gets you pretty close, but the shorthand of that is if you look at your annual expenses each year, and then you multiply that by 25, that is the inverse, that's the reciprocal of 4%, is multiplying by 25. And that tells you like what nest egg you need. Now, that said, these days, some of the original folks that did those studies and the way the market has been and many other details, some people will say, oh, maybe it's 5% or maybe 5.5% is what you could safely withdraw each year and never run out of money. That's debatable. Some people say it's 3% or 3.5%, so you have to figure out what works for you, what you're most comfortable with, and you have some leeway. But essentially, if you aim for 4%, that's a lot of money, The other I'll give you an example just to make the math easy. If your annual expenses are $40,000 a year, then you would need to save $1 million, or you could double that, right? It's linear. So if your expenses are 80K, then you need to save $2 million. So not anything to sneeze at, but if you're in your mid 40s, like I am, and you've been saving since you were in your 20s, compound interest does kick in, and everybody's in a different situation. Like, we don't have kids, like some people have a family, or you have to support your parents or a sibling or whatever, aunt, uncle, fill in the blank, right? Like, everyone's in a different situation. But at some point, you end up with compound interest working for you. And I have a couple friends where they actually like working. They actually like the corporate structure, which I don't understand why, but there's some reason they enjoy the corporate structure. Basically, like, I have some friends, and let's say they have $4 million. And the guy was like, I thought about working again. And he's been retired for about 4 years. He was like, I thought about working, but like, we've saved up so much money that whatever job he gets, he'll be earning less than the interest that he is making on their nest egg. So again, if they've saved $4 million, if you take that, 40,000 number, multiply it by 4, 40,000, 1 million. So 160K. So he's like, if I got a job, I would make less than 160K, and we're making that by not doing anything. So he's like, I'm having a great time, spending time with family. He spends time on cooking, and I just made up the amount, and I'm not even mentioning the person, but he's like, even if I got a job, I would not make as much as we're making by not doing anything. So overall, that is like the idea of the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early. And I've basically ended up talking to people who are roughly my age that, they discovered it in their mid 30s, and they were doing most things okay, nothing perfect. Maybe they weren't saving enough. Maybe they had some credit card debt. Maybe they have car payments and a couple other things like that. But within a couple years, they get everything on track, no more credit card debt. They're watching their expenses a little more closely, so they're not, mindlessly buying things that they don't need, and they get rid of the car payment. And within another few years, because they were doing most things right, not everything, they're able to retire in their early 40s. So many people I've talked to are in that situation where, as long as they didn't completely disregard like any financial responsibility, usually they're able to get things in place pretty quickly. There's some other folks where, like, maybe they didn't pay attention to any of this retire early stuff, but they were doing very well. Maybe they don't have car payments. Maybe they're pretty frugal anyway. They've been socking away 15, 20% in their 401ks for 20, 25 years. And I'm thinking of a specific couple, some friends of mine, and basically they were getting tired of work, and one of them was going to get laid off. And then they checked their numbers, they did some research, and then they realized, we can quit working. So one of them quit within months, I think, and the other one kept working for about a year. She just wasn't sure yet about stopping work, and she needed to wind things down a little bit, and it allowed them to sort of like gradually get into it. One big advantage I had is I was able to slowly do less work as I was self-employed. Essentially, I say I quiet quit on myself, because I was just like, you know what? I don't like doing this stuff. And I mean, it's the job that I created. I work for myself, right? So I slowly like backed away from certain things to the point where the work I am doing now is distilled down to the creative stuff that I want to work on. And I imagine at some point I will get a little bit more bored and think, I want to actually do a little bit more work. One of those things which has been on the back burner is a book on laziness and anti-productivity. So it actually fits in really well with some of the stuff that I talked about, where I just wanted to work on the stuff that I want to work on, or nothing. And there's some strategies and ideas that I've slowly come around to, because I would have been pretty resistant probably in my, say, early 20s to mid 30s, fairly resistant, but then the corporate structure kind of wore me down a little bit. That said, I think I have some innate self-motivation, and I don't get a lot of validation from like external sources so much, whether that's performance reviews or like getting promoted. Although if they fucking paid me more, then probably I would have been like a lot more interested. It's funny, it's like the noisiest day. I think someone is throwing rocks around now. It's a real ambiance out here. But basically, like, that book, it's something that I worked on for a little while. I was working on with my old podcast partner, Carl Jensen, and we worked on it for a while. And I think Carl was very busy, so he got part of the way done, but I think it's something that I may take and spend more time on it. And there's actually a lot of interest. I get, unfortunately now there's people asking me about once a month. They're like, oh, how's the book coming along? And I'm like, I haven't touched it in a while, so nothing's happening. So in an average week, I'm probably working about 10 hours per week. I also realize that there's probably 1 week per month that I don't do any work. And I either am traveling a little bit, or I just decided I'm going to play guitar mostly this week. I'm going to work out, and then I just look at my email and make sure that I don't need to. Actually, I don't even look at my email every day now, which is pretty freeing, because you think, I really have to. Turns out you don't. You don't have to look at it every day, and it's totally fine. So the other part is, while a lot of people in the niche site industry, I think a lot of people did reinvest a great deal of the money that they were earning back into the sites. I did not. I only reinvested 10 or 15%, and then I de-risk, because I viewed the niche sites and that side of the business to be extremely volatile. And I learned that right away with some of my first sites, where they would get a lot of traffic, they would earn money, and then they would tank and earn nothing. So I was like, this is way too volatile to like reinvest everything. I can't go that route. So I de-risk and put it into another investment. And then over time, compound interest kicked in, and then it's great. I really enjoy not working. I can't imagine like working a full-time job. It would have to be something very specific, and I can't even imagine it. So the other part is, you could spend your time on your hobbies and things that you enjoy. And most of the people that I talk to that have several hobbies, they end up having a really great time not working. I'll mention there's a handful of people, I'll make up an example too, but there's a handful of people who are like, I'm going to retire early, and then they try it, and then they do the thing that they thought that they were going to enjoy, and it doesn't quite work out how they think, and then they go back to work. And I feel so bad for them, and I think they're making a huge mistake 99.9% of the time. The example that I'll give is someone's like, oh, I want to retire, and then I'm going to travel. Because that's the thing, everybody's like, oh, I want to travel. Most people would want to travel more, but some people, they don't want to be away from home too much. And we don't want to be away from home too much. Everyone's different, and some people want to be on the road, whatever, constantly, every day of the year. They just want to move into a van, fucking travel around. And that works for some people. But the big issue is, like, if you think you're going to love van life, and then you quit your job, you saved up a huge pile of money, and then you hop into a van, you start driving around, you realize, oh, this sucks. I don't like being in a van. I want to have a more permanent place. But you think that it's the van, and you're like, oh, you know what? this didn't work out. It looks like I better go back to work, and they just automatically go back to work. There's a decent number of people that do that. And part of it is like their identity and ego is tied up with their old work. And part of it is just like, they're not willing to test and admit, I thought I was going to enjoy traveling, but it turns out I don't enjoy traveling and I should probably try something else. And they don't test anything out. They get their old company, they call them back and they're like, hey, so-and-so quit. Do you want to work here again? And they fucking go back to work, and then they're right back into the grind. And maybe that frees them because it's an option now. Like they're choosing to do it. They don't have to do it. But at the same time, I believe the opportunity costs are too great to go back to do something that you apparently didn't like before, because there's so much stuff you could do. You have infinite choices. So it's when people think that they're going to enjoy something, they try it, and then it doesn't work. That's when they freak out and they get a job again. And I think it's a huge waste of time. Depends on the company. Like if you're a social worker and you're like, I want to continue helping people, that's great. Corporate structure. I mean, I've been meeting a lot of lawyers recently, corporate, high-level lawyers, high stress. They typically hate it and they quit and they're like, I don't want to look back. I'm having a great time. I had like a consulting and engineering job. You know, a lot of consultants and engineers, they don't like it. Once they get out, they're like, this is great. I have a ton of hobbies, and they work on that stuff. Georgie, you're a good dog. All right, I guess I'll try to play us out of here. Okay, Georgie, you're a good dog.